Hello and welcome back to IT Coach for Small Business Leaders, a podcast by InfoSystems. I'm Josh Davis, the VP of Marketing at InfoSystems, and with me, as always, is Aaron Swan, Virtual CIO and the IT Coach for Small Business Leaders.
Good morning, Josh.
I feel like I need some kind of dramatic intro music right there.
You need something there. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, well, I'll just sing a song or, make it entertaining. People would love that, right?
Do you even need me for this then?
This could just be the Josh Davis Show.
Yeah.
We could rename the podcast and, just take Aaron Swan out of it. And Welcome, Aaron. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing good. So what are we talking about?
Well, today we are going to finish the series that we have been on for the last few episodes on managed services. We're going to wind up today with vCIO, which is a portion that InfoSystems offers with our managed services.
That's your favorite part of our managed services offering.
It's the thing I relate most well to, I guess, because that's what I do on a daily basis. So we're going to kind of try to define that term and just give some ideas of what it means.
Great. That sounds interesting. So kick us off.
All right. So, practically speaking, you think of vCIO, what we mean for it is the idea that we have a individual within our organization that engages with executive leadership at your business to be able to do things like align technology to your business. So we'll start off with that. I'm going to use the word alignment a lot today because that's really what a lot of what I do is work with company executives to align technology and all the widgets out there and systems to your business needs and what you're trying to do. So that comes down to needs, it comes down to budgets, and trying to put those in terms that management can work with. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a practical example of that. We've probably talked about this one on the podcast before, but I think it's a good example. Let's talk about backups, for example. If you're leaving your backups just to your IT folks to make decisions about that, they may or may not get it right. And so one of the things is to determine your backups, just what are your objectives? What are you aiming for? So there's a couple key ones there. One is called recovery point objective, and the other one's recovery time objective. The idea is recovery point, and we're not going to belabor this today, but recovery point is just the idea of if I have a failure of some sort where I'm going to lose data, how far back do I need to go to get good data that I can use? Recovery time goes the opposite way. It's just from the point of failure is how long is it going to be until I'm back up and running? So, the obvious answer to that is 0 for both. We'd like to never lose any data and be back up instantly. But the truth is, while 0 is almost obtainable, 0 is expensive, right? So that's a business decision that, corporate management needs to make on how much money do they want to invest, how much risk do they want to take. So that's not something you want your IT folks making that decision.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense that if you leave those decisions up to the IT department, they may make the most expensive decision.
Sure.
When something less expensive would have been perfectly adequate for the type of business you do, or vice versa. They may choose a less expensive when really that's an area where you needed the most expensive option to do the best you could. So.
And we see both. I think we probably see choose the less expensive more often just on the idea that, wow, I don't know what my budget is. I don't want to overstep my bounds here. And so, sometimes that can result in more downtime than the company would have been comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think you're right. A lot of times company employees sort of default to this mindset that I need to save money for my company.
Right.
Like how can I do this as inexpensively as possible? In my role, I really need to do my best to protect the company's budget, and that may ultimately mean that I'm making decisions that harm the company because I'm not spending enough on something that I should have done a better job or created a stronger. Yeah,
absolutely. So the second thing we'll talk about that the vCIO can do for your business is act as a translator. I have, when I'm out with friends or family or something, it's like, what do you do? And I end up telling them all the time, at least half of my job is just being bilingual, right? So it's translating between those two speaks of management speak, which has its own language, right? And then IT speak, which definitely has its own language. I've been fortunate over the course of my career to have worked in management and worked in engineering, and so I'm somewhat bilingual. And so a lot of my position is just the idea of translating between those two, bringing the two together and facilitating conversation so that we can be on the same page about what our objectives are.
We'll be back with the IT Coach for Small Business Leaders podcast after we pause for this special message. I'm Josh Davis, VP of Marketing at InfoSystems. You may have seen me co-hosting episodes of our podcast, IT Coach for Small Business Leaders. Did you know that you can book a personal IT strategy session with Aaron Swan, host of this podcast? We created this podcast to be a valuable resource for small business leaders in our community, but we wanted to take it one step further. You can book a free meeting with Aaron Swan to review your IT strategy and help you build a plan that will lead to IT success. Just visit our website at www.infosystems.biz, follow the link to book your IT strategy session, and you'll be able to work directly with Aaron to build your IT strategy. Now back to the podcast. You always think of the IT people of having these acronyms and difficult terms, but on the business side, there's especially when you're talking financials and stuff, there's all types of acronyms and terms that unless you have gone through the education or lived it in business, you're not going to understand what's going on, and so the need for a translator, yes.
Yeah, because you've got your business buzzwords. So you enter the vCIO so that we have synergy, right?
Yeah.
To use one of those words.
Yeah, and honestly, in the marketing role at an IT company, that's often the position I find myself in too, is how do you take all of these complex IT topics and create natural human language out of it so that we can tell people what it is we really do.
Yeah. So moving on, the third thing is, I told you we're going to use that word alignment a lot today. So we started off with aligning your technology with your business needs. The other thing we want to align your IT practices, your systems with is best practices or, some sort of standard. Let me tell you how we got there. I have the opportunity to meet with lots of businesses, go in and sit down with them in a pre-sales operation to find out about their business. And inevitably on that first meeting, the person who we're meeting with will have brought a laundry list of issues that they're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And that's super important to them to air those list of things. We've got this problem, we've got this, and this is going on, and we just can't seem to get around that. And after having done literally hundreds of these, you really start to see the patterns in those, and those same items just come up over and over. And I've heard them, but they're new to the company, and so we have certainly found over time the idea that, and I will tell the people when I'm meeting with them this fact that generally speaking, about 89% of those, we can make about 89% of those go away with just proper design for your network. So we have recently at InfoSystems started working with another company called True Methods that we're using some of their software to help drive our conversations. And they had an excellent little diagram. I'm kind of borrowing from them today just to kind of show you this. So if you picture this, and you see the rectangle on here, imagine that rectangle as being the standards of what a company's IT system should look like. And that standard is defined through industry best practices. It's defined through our experience in working with hundreds of companies. We find what works and what our engineers can get the most bang for buck out of. So our goal is to try to get a company's network to look like this rectangle. Now the reality is every company out there, their network tends to look a little more like this blob, right? None of them fully match up to it. And truth is they probably are never going to completely match up just because technology keeps changing. no one has unlimited budgets that they can throw at it to get the perfect network. So, sometimes we have to make compromises, but the goal is to constantly be stretching this blob. We've got a big gap here. It's trying to pull this line out here, and it's maybe trying to cram this area back inside the box. So, one of the tasks of the vCIO, go ahead.
As a explanation to people who may be listening and not watching this podcast, I'm going to describe the visual aid that Aaron is using here. He's got a piece of paper, a very low-tech method of creating a visual aid, but nonetheless effective. And on this piece of paper is a perfectly drawn rectangle with what looks like a splat of slime or a blob on top of it. And so there's areas where the blob is inside the rectangle and areas where the blob is outside of the rectangle. And so when he talked about gaps, needing to stretch the blob, you're trying to stretch the areas that are inside the rectangle out to the edge of the rectangle, and the areas that are outside of the rectangle, pull those back in.
Yeah, well, thanks. So the vCIO's role in all of that is to work with company management to make those decisions. Get the alignment again. We're working with alignment with your business needs, alignment with your budget, but it's trying to get that alignment with best practices so that over time you become more and more conformed. Now, that rectangle is going to change shape too. Over time it's going to grow because IT practices, the world of IT just keeps growing and expanding. So it's a constant battle, but it's one worth fighting because the idea is to cut down on what we call reactive noise, right? Mm-hmm. The idea that I've got this problem, I've got to go react to it. So it's all about proactivity and trying to design things that operate as efficiently as possible.
That's good. And I like the visual aid. I was just thinking, like most of these podcast apps, you can upload documents, like presentation documents, to go along. Maybe we need to take that really well done image of a rectangle and a blob and add that onto the podcast app so that people can download and look at this fantastic artwork we're using.
That sounds like a job for the marketing department, Josh.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So a couple more things here. Another thing that our vCIO services offer to our customers is just engagement with your team, with our team, the mix of the two to get the work done. So, depending on the company we operate with, in some cases our vCIOs will manage the IT workers of a company. Some cases they may not have any IT team, and so we've got a bench of subject matter experts that can come in and work. But the vCIO can coordinate between the two to just make sure the work gets done according to what we've defined.
Yeah, that's great.
And then lastly is just simply trying to be forward-looking, planning for the future, looking down the road and noticing, trends. An example we use many times is just noticing disk space, right? The idea that if you keep going at your current growth rate and how you're consuming data, 9 months from now, you're going to be out of space. So we need to start planning for that now or change behavior in some way. But it's all about prediction. It's also looking at industry trends and saying, hey, Mr. Customer, I want you to be aware that this has come down the pipe recently, and I think this would be a good fit for your business and would help you improve your productivity.
Yes. The more I think about the vCIO role, the more, I just think about the value for the business owner to have the person who's, like you said, literally seen and done these things for hundreds of companies.
Yeah.
Hundreds of times over the years, rather than just taking this on as an initiative for the first time or the second time or third time at your company. You could bring somebody in who has done this hundreds of times and who has the ability to bridge the gap between business leadership and IT, to design things, purchase things, spend money, put policies and procedures into place, all of those things that need to happen. It's just so much easier to work with someone who has that experience rather than just hope for the best. thought I'd throw in a quick recap. That as I heard you explain these things, that's really where my mind went, thinking about the real value to the business, and you just can't hire somebody off the street to do those types of things.
Right.
It really has to be somebody who has been in your type of role at an IT company to see the number of companies and the number of projects and the number of instances of all of these things that you have to really gain that level of expertise.
And we are in a unique position of being able to just be those. I think I've used the illustration before. We're like the little honeybees that are cross-pollinating between all these businesses.
Yeah.
And being able to share the experience we've learned in one business with another to just help grow the whole community.
Yep. Great stuff.
So, I think that wraps up our managed services series. Hopefully puts a bow on the idea of how all the various systems work together just to allow us to offer a packaged offering that can really just make your system run a whole lot more smoothly.
Yeah, so for any listener or viewer out there who has kept up with this podcast over the last, how many has it been, 6 or 7 episodes maybe?
Something like that.
Talking about managed services stuff, those are really all part of one thing that InfoSystems does for customers, which is become a partner to your business and provide ongoing managed IT services from the very top level of business consulting and strategic IT decisions all the way down to the very practical day-to-day stuff, like if something goes wrong and an employee needs to call somebody for help desk services.
Sure.
To resolve basic issues, and covers really everything in between. So if you have not listened to all of the managed services episodes, I think it's valuable information. You may not even be aware that companies offer this depth of service, but it's really the direction that the IT industry has been moving toward for, probably 5 to 10 years now.
Right.
Instead of being the reactionary company that comes in and helps you install equipment, or when something breaks, order a new component and fix the problem, to being active in the day-to-day operations of your company as an IT partner. So I think that was valuable information, and as always, Aaron, great insight. You've had a 25-year plus career with InfoSystems now. That the entire time our company has been in existence, you've been a part of it. So you really have built up that level of experience and acumen that not many people in our market, especially here in Chattanooga, have to offer. So awesome stuff.
Thanks, Josh.
So we'll leave it at that. Thanks everybody for tuning in to IT Coach for Small Business Leaders. We'll see you next time.